On Friday, April 13th, early afternoon, I received a phone call from my daughter. She was in an elevated state of anxiety because she was being followed by a vehicle in very close proximity to her rear bumper. She asked me, "Dad, I have this creep following me in this blue car, and I can't seem to shake him, and I don't know why." I told her, I said, "Well, perhaps he's following you in your general direction. There's no need for you to panic. I'm sure he's going to turn off at the major intersection." She said, "Dad, this is really not the case." I asked her why, and she told me that she has been evading him for the last 10 minutes in and out of subdivisions and side roads, faking her going to somebody's house. And I asked her, "Well, what happened?" She would go, "Well, I would turn into this subdivision or that subdivision, and then I would re-exit the subdivision, and he would re-exit along with me." I said, "Well, how long has this been going on?" She said, "It's going on for several minutes." So I asked her to come home, because at that time I was home. She said to me, "No, Dad, I don't want to come home, because in driver's ed, they teach you not to show the house to someone who's following you." And she was pretty adamant about that. And I said, "Okay, why don't you drive to the nearest police station, which is Shelby Township Police?" She said she did not know where the police station was. After a couple of minutes of thinking of another alternative plan, I suggested to my daughter that she drive to my neighbor's house, who was outside at the time doing chores. My neighbor is a former lieutenant in a very large police department, and I've known him for over 12 years for sure. And he's been very kind to our family over the years, and he has given us advice about these matters. I took my cell phone and walked across the street to my neighbor's house. My neighbor indicated to me that he was going to go get his phone and his ID, and my daughter was welcome to park on his driveway. At which point, my daughter made a right-hand turn into the area where we live of our subdivision, and sure enough, this guy was riding a foot off of her bumper. She had parked the car in my neighbor's driveway, and my neighbor and I were standing on the driveway trying to ascertain what is it that this guy was trying to do. He rushed up to us, braked very harshly. His passenger window was lowered, and I simply leaned inside the passenger window and asked him, why was he following my daughter, and who was he? And his answer was, "I'll show you who I am." He reached in, grabbed his gun, and pointed it at my chest. At which point, I put my hands in the air, and I started backing away and trying to get myself out of that predicament. And I told him, "Why are things getting this far? What could my daughter have possibly done to you?" In the meanwhile, my neighbor, through his police experience, was approaching his car, talking to him, and begging him to put the pistol away, that there was no need for this, and that there is no danger here. And the perpetrator looked at my neighbor and pointed the gun to him. I felt that that was an opportunity for me to start moving from left to right, because at this time my daughter was getting out of the car, and I wanted to position my body between his gun and my daughter. He was completely unhinged. He was in an elevated emotional state. He exited the car. The gun was still in his hand, and he cursed at my daughter and myself, claiming that she had either cut him off or bumped him somewhere on Van Dyke. To which I replied that if it's only a traffic accident, I would have been very happy to ascertain the damages together with him and figure out if there was any monetary compensation to calm him down. My daughter came out in hysterics, started crying. We were trying to calm this person down, and at which point he angrily slammed his badge on the roof of his car and proceeded to inform us that he was a police officer with the city of Rochester. At that point, I said to him, well, if you're a police officer, then everything is good. But deep down inside, by the appearance of the interior of the car, from the way he looked, from his manner and behavior and his elevated emotional state, I did not think him to be a cop. I just thought that this was his excuse to get out of the situation, which I wanted him to. Basically, just leave us alone, I bought your story. My neighbor proceeded to talk to him and qualify him as a cop, and they had conversations to that end. My neighbor seemed to believe at the end of these conversations that indeed he was a police officer. While the two of them were talking, I slowly, with my hands raised, backed out of the situation, took my daughter, and went home. And that's exactly what happened. My neighbor talked to him for a few more minutes, after which he got back in his car and he left.
Was there an altercation?
I didn't even have time to react. Because you see, he was driving so close to my daughter's car that by the time my daughter parked, I had him right in front of me. And because I deferred to the expertise of my neighbor, I was actually expecting my neighbor to handle this, not me. And the only thing I did was lean from a standstill position. I didn't even approach the car or anything. And just ask him, why are you following my daughter? And I was actually very polite about it. And that's what happened. By the time I asked him the one question, I had the gun pointed at my chest.
What was that like?
I was absolutely shocked. My whole body went into shock. I remember staring down the barrel of his gun, of which a description I gave to the police. And I couldn't understand why is it that I was about to get shot. I just couldn't comprehend what is it that I did. And how is it that this trouble came to my house? And the very first thought that crossed my mind was, oh my God, my daughter is only a couple of feet away from me. And so the best thing I could do at this point is at the very least, position my body between him and my daughter, which is what I did. And I figured that if anybody was going to get shot, it was going to be me. And further, my elevated state of terror came in when he pointed the gun to my neighbor. And at that point, there was a few seconds of absolute panic.
How is your daughter doing?
She's coping with it, would be probably a better way to put it. She has feelings of guilt for, you got to remember she's underage, she's 16. She's only been driving for 6 months, and she really didn't have any clue as to what was really happening. And so she's, I guess, trying the best she can to put it out of her mind. But she does feel guilt because she feels that she's endangered her father through some action of her own, when in fact there was no action.
Did they ever get in an accident?
No, they did not. There was no damage to either vehicle. In my mind, what's even more alarming is that what would he have done to my daughter had he caught up with her alone? See, this officer did not call Shelby Township Police, as is protocol. He took it upon himself to follow somebody and stalk them for the better part of 15 minutes. He was fully aware that she was a young lady because their eyes met at some point while they were chasing each other down certain boulevards. Why did he persist? What was his final intent? And given the circumstances and given what he did to me and my neighbor, one only can think that he was up to no good. Because after all, what was he going to do? He's in a different jurisdiction. He's in an unmarked car. What was he going to do to her?
How do you process what he did?
In my opinion, this is habitual with this individual. I can only give you my opinion. In my opinion, I think that he's a bully, and I think that this is a culture with him. I think that he was on some kind of a power trip. I think he wanted to show or teach someone a lesson, and he's used to doing this. Yes, he was mad. Yes, he was elevated. But at no point after the entire incident did he show remorse. Did he apologize? Did he do anything? This guy was in control of the entire situation from start to finish, up until the time he got in his car and he left my neighborhood.